Hi everyone, here we are at the Future Blockchain Summit in Dubai, and it's my honor to have with me Professor Richard Werner, a very well-acclaimed economist, author of Princess of the Yen, and also an expert on quantitative easing, actually the founder of quantitative easing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right. I made the first
it's a pleasure to meet you finally, and thanks for taking out the time to speak to us. So what we're doing here is we've been talking to our audiences, which is a mix of people who are interested in crypto, blockchain, and Web3. And obviously, you come from a very traditional background in economist, and we'd like to know your views on subjects that touch the areas of fintech and finance, and where you see this space evolving into. So why don't you tell us, what has your experience been, first of all, at this conference with the kind of projects and the people that you're meeting? I know you've been speaking as well.
Yes.
Here.
Well, it's been very good. I'm always delighted at the level of interest I encounter, in this space. Exactly, your audience is actually quite knowledgeable and most of all very, very curious and realizes that these are really important areas. Even if you come from a totally different background, everyone needs to understand money, monetary systems, transactions, what's happening there, the developments, and if it's not all good, what can we do to secure our finances, to secure our freedom, our financial freedom, but in general freedom, So I'm really delighted by the experience of the last 2-3 years. So the level of interest has really increased.
Definitely, and obviously the world is currently has been going through for the last few years, with inflation, and we've seen a lot of challenges in the financial markets. And I know your focus has been on small banking, and working with micro banking and creating those networks, which are part of your theory of quantitative easing, where, can you tell us a bit more about that and how that sort of fits in this picture of the current economic scenario?
Yes. Well, I started out looking at the big banks and the central banks, the big players. And once you see what's happening there, of course, you're looking for solutions to the problem. And once you understand the problem, the causes, then you work towards solutions. And it became clear, well, the solution is actually to have decentralized money creation, because the power and the decision-making power of money creation is such an important power, such a far-reaching power that has many implications. It shouldn't be concentrated in the hands of a small number of people. It is better in every respect. It's also actually more effective and economically more efficient, but also for many other reasons, it's better to decentralize that and spread the money creation. And it turns out we have such a system because in many countries have a banking system consisting of many banks. Of course, there are time periods in the past where there was only one central bank, the Soviet planning system, centralized to the hilt. But otherwise, normally, we have decentralization. But the pressures have been on in the last half century, but they're really accelerating in the last decade to centralize the system more and more. Small banks merging, banks getting bigger, fewer banks, more concentration, and of course the machinations of the central banks. So in response, I've been putting a lot of time and energy into setting up community banks, helping communities to get a banking license. We have the know-how at Local First Community Interest Company. If you contact me on my website, professorwerner.org, there's also contact details. We have the know-how, so that shouldn't be the hurdle anymore to get a banking license. We need the capital, so that's where we need to ask those that are wealthier to contribute to the community by providing capital with a great return, at a very good return. Banking is one of the most profitable industries, so why wouldn't you want to do this?
Definitely.
And then establishing as a result a stronger, more resilient, decentralized system. Also, I've been working on buying up small banks and repurposing them, turning them into community banks, which is also a good way. Currently, there's a bank. There's always one coming up, but there's one in Switzerland. So if there's any investors come forward, you can be the main investor, and it's very profitable.
So basically, you're sort of reinventing existing old school banks, focusing on the community banking side of things.
Yes, and just at a time when the banks are really threatened and they've been targeted by the central planners and really lined up on the death row, lined up for abolition. That's what they're trying to do with central bank digital currencies.
Yes,
this is going to be the end of banking.
Yes. So obviously, I'd like to come to CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. But you mentioned decentralization and the power of that. So do you think there is hype, or decentralization can actually reinvent or change the way banking is done, especially when we talk about community banking, SMEs, and having like real, economic impact?
Yes. Well, if we just look at the facts, that what the data says, it's very clear that true local community banking has been hugely successful. That's really the most successful model for economic development, for prosperity, for high and stable growth. And it's very simple. The more small banks, the more local banks you have, the stronger your economy, the greater your wealth, the greater your economic growth is going to be. And therefore, that's very, very proven. Of course, we can use and will use also the latest technologies. And I mean, that's where, blockchain, for example, is a double-edged sword. I mean, it is a quite a powerful technology. But the question is it going to be used by centralizers for centralizing, or by decentralizers for decentralizing? And of course, in the interest of the public, of the greater good, it's better to have a decentralized system. It's also more resilient to shocks, because the centralized system is based on the premise that these few handful of powerful central planners, they're smarter, they know more, they do things better, and because of that, yes, we give them this power to decide our lives, basically. But of course, the historical record is, this has almost never been the case. And a decentralized system is superior in every respect. And that's been proven also in related disciplines. If you look at organizational structures and principles, successful organizations are the ones that introduce decentralization as far down the hierarchy as possible. They will be more productive, more effective. You do need to invest more in education because you're giving people more responsibility to decide for themselves. But it's a good thing because education has many other positive side effects. So anyway, decentralization is clearly superior.
So, when we talk about decentralization, and obviously we're looking for that to solve a lot of these problems, and then we have CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies, and they have that semblance of, using technology, but at the same time, aren't they sort of counterproductive to this whole philosophy of decentralization? What are your views on that?
Yes, well, what actually are CBDCs? The obfuscation starts with this. The central planners are trying to sell it to us by saying, it's a digital world, we've got to keep up with the times and the technology, so we're upgrading from cash to digital currency. What is unusual? That's the normal thing to do, isn't it? That's how they're selling it. But hang on. That's already misinformation, because so you're saying the new thing is the digital aspect? Well, hang on. We've been using BDC, bank digital currencies, for decades already, and it works very well. Because what banks are doing is digital, has been digital for a long time, and the digital payment system has been around for ages. So really, what is the new thing? Oh, it's the CBDC, the central aspect. And is that really a good thing? By centralizing this now? And we have to realize what this means, because what the central planners find really attractive about the CBDC proposals is the programmability, which gives the central bank the ability to basically do everything. They will be in charge of your money. They will decide what you're going to spend it on and what you can't spend it on, and where and when and how. All these details. They have the technology. They will also have the legal privilege to do so, and that means that most people don't realize this. Central banks are currently staging a coup d'etat to take over the government and be the controllers of everything, because CBDCs have the technology, and they will, if we allow it to happen, they will, with the programmability, have usurped parliamentary powers. You don't need parliaments anymore. Normally, the decision of how governments spend money, drawing up budgets, government spending and schedules, how is it divided, transfer payments in society, all these things, is done through the parliamentary process. It's actually the last remaining thing for parliamentarians to do, because other functions have already been spun out to independent central banks to do monetary policy and economic policy. An independent debt management office supposed to be, national debt management, and we're constantly already taking away from these powers. But if central banks now have CBDCs, there's nothing left for Parliament, more or less, and maybe foreign policy, to do in the economic sphere. And so people don't realize this is actually a political coup d'etat for central planners to decide on how all money will be spent, how government fiscal spending will be done, and when and how and who is going to get money, and for what purposes can you use money, what people can do with their assets. So it's actually clearly also stepping far beyond the current powers we've given to governments to interfere in our private affairs. I mean, it's basically mind-bogglingly dystopian. We're talking about a totalitarian control tool, and we must stop it. It's very important. Everyone has to realize this is worth going out and demonstrating against for.
So it's actually the opposite of what we're trying to achieve with decentralization. But I think for a lot of common people and masses, they, like you said, they confuse it with something to do with cryptocurrencies, which it is not. It's actually taking centralization to the next level, where there is a totalitarian system which knows every move of your currency or what you're doing with your money.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Secure. Richard, it's a pleasure having you. Definitely an honor for us, and definitely I'm sure our audience is going to love it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.